public budget consultation meeting open at 1:30. With that, I will pass it over to CEO Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm pretty sure that most of you have read the budget package. All of you have, right? I'll just highlight some of the executive summary. As the Chief Administrative Officer for the County of Stellar, it's my privilege to present the draft 2022 to 2025 budget for Council's consideration with a 4-year operating budget and a 6-year capital plan. Our challenge with the budget was to maintain current services and service levels with declining revenue resources while maintaining prudence with capital asset management and plans that will keep our county proactively navigating into the future. With the continuation of the pandemic combined with the ongoing reduction in MSI, or Municipal Sustainability Initiative grant funding, as this program is phased out by municipal affairs for municipalities, we have been left feeling like we're swimming upstream against an ever stronger current. Our old revenue sources are no longer reliable. Oil and gas taxation revenue has not rebounded, and our county, like many others, continues to put out much effort in obtaining collectibles from this industry. The 35% assessment reduction extended to shallow gas wells in 2020 by the province has been extended to 21, 22, and 23 taxation years, in addition to a 3-year property exemption for new wells and pipelines. Municipalities like ours are left with basically 2 options: to cut services or raise taxes. This budget proposes to raise taxes by 3% to keep up with inflation and maintain current service levels. We will also strategically use reserve funds to offset greater tax increases in 2022. We will continue to capitalize on grant funding to maintain and support our sustainable communities. We intend to and prepare to piggyback on projects coming into our region from other levels of government to save dollars for our own needs. We will set aside funds carefully and prudently, planning for future capital purchases and identified needs and projects. We will prepare a long-term reserve plan. We have a very dedicated and talented workforce who live and recreate and support our communities. We will invest in our valued employees and continue to cross-train and foster education and skill development to ensure we have a talented, trained, multifaceted workforce able to adjust as projects and municipal needs are adjusted. We will continue to prepare our staff for succession. We will position our people and our teams to be project specialists, capitalizing on grant funding, to execute shovel-ready projects, looking for priorities of our citizens as put forth in our annual survey. We will focus on our roads and road maintenance using our 100-year plus gravel supply. We will continue to strengthen and enforce our bylaws, ensuring safety of our roads and citizens. We will provide support to our agricultural industry through enhanced weed control and continuation of pest control and our equipment lending program. And we will expand our future water lines to provide clean, fresh, potable water to those who are struggling to maintain existing operations. So, unless there's any questions, I'd like to pass it over to Krista, and she can go through it section by section.
Any questions?
Have none.
Okay. We'll pass it over.
Thank you very much. So what you see before you is the 2022 to 2025 budget. The budget that we presented only has to have 1 year balanced. So the 2023, 24, and 25 budgets are strictly for planning purposes. This allows council to look forward to future projects and be aware of what could be coming down. We are required to do a 4-year operational budget and a 6-year capital budget. These are set out by Municipal Affairs and as part of the MGA. There will be some small changes that will be coming on the budget. So this will be the first budget that we pass, and then we will be passing another budget once we pass the tax bylaw and have all of our assessment numbers in, and that budget will be coming forward as a revised budget in May. And then we will also have not just the budgets, that will be some tax changes, any capital that was flagged or projects that were flagged that were not completed at the end of 2021, those will also get carried through. So I'm going to jump right into the budget now. And what you'll see before you is a budget that includes a 3% tax increase to municipal taxes as directed by council to fund capital. During 2022, we've seen a 60% decrease in our Municipal Sustainability Initiative grant. So that funding has gone down by 60%, which was approximately a $2 million cut to our budget. Capital cuts was a huge factor in balancing the budget, and the 3% increase in taxes is being used to fund capital additions for the 22 tax year. You'll also see that the policing requisition is also increasing. The policing requisition was a requisition that came down from the province and is set for 4 years, and then it'll sustain itself at what levels they've got in 2025, I believe is the final year, maybe 24. With that, the school resource officer, or the SRO, we were under the assumption that that would be included in the policing funding model. That is not the case. We've since been advised. So that has been an increase as well to the budget. So then the council budget is the first budget besides requisitions that we look at. Council budget, you're going to see a small increase, and it's to better reflect meetings required for council to attend. In 2019, the meetings budget was around $260,000. And we spent approximately $225,000 of that, and that was in 19. In 2020, we recognized that we could lower that expense and brought that budget down. In 2021, we had a $200,000 budget line and spent $217,000. With increased meetings with some of the items I'll be mentioning later on in my presentation, you're going to see that there's going to be more meetings for council to attend. So we decided to better reflect the budget with the meetings that you guys have attended in past years, as well as future meetings that you're going to have. So that's what you see as an increase in the council budget. No good, no questions? Sorry.
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I may, questions and comments from the public will open up at the end, and we'll do a minor tech demo on how to raise your hand and stuff at that time.
Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead.
So the next budget that I'm going to discuss is the administration budget. So if you look at the administration budget, it's actually a 27% increase. However, the reason there was an increase was in 2021, we received a grant for the MOST grant, which is the Municipal Operating Support Transfer. It was a one-time grant that we used to cover uncollectible taxes in oil and gas industry. And the grant was, if we removed the grant from our calculation, it would be a 1.3% decrease in administration from last year to this year. Some of the major projects that we are looking at in the administration is increasing automation with functionality of computers and technology. We've been working hard on getting all of our vault and records digitized. With the dissolution of Gadsby and Botha over the past 5 years, those records have come back to us, and we're getting to the part of getting all of those implemented into our system, which has been a huge process. With our vault digitization, and as we've seen with other municipalities, how important it is to have digitization, we have all of our land files, agreements, payables, receivables, a lot of our finance function is all already done. So it's adding in the new projects that tend to come about.
Can I just ask a question? So this is a liability issue for us. Without those being digitized, we are at a liability because, for example, what happened to our neighbors when their admin building burnt down, they lost all their information. We cannot afford to do that. So a lot of what we do is liabilities.
Okay. If somebody says they haven't heard me.
So yes, it is a liability risk. I'll just kind of summarize. It is a liability risk to the county to not have our records digitized. From a standpoint as well as when you're away from your office, you need information. If a vet needs information, Andrew needs information, we do have the ability to get into our system and be able to look at information on a quick basis, which can save everybody a lot of time as well. So there. Yes, Justin?
Without going into too much detail, have we not already run into issues with bylaws not being properly documented from some of these villages when they came in and caused ongoing work and trying to backtrack and find this?
I think that's a fair assumption. Andrew's dealt with this more than myself. Do you want to answer it, Andrew?
Yeah, we did have one village bylaw, for example, that wasn't actually properly filed, and so prosecution under that bylaw was withdrawn.
We are also, with administration, working on enhancing our health and safety program, which includes elevating staff safety and security. And some of the challenges that administration also feels is making sure that we do have adequate cross-training, so everybody's got that cross-training, and we also have some future retirees that we need to ensure that we're planning for. So that's just some of the challenges for admin in 22. Is there any other questions on administration? Okay, so I'm just going to roll into fire. So fire, there were some projects that weren't completed with capital in the 2021 year. And once we get those all moved over to the budget, we'll be showing a 5.8% increase in 2022 over the prior year. Some of the things that fire will be working on in the next calendar year will be updating fire agreements with other municipalities to collect a more equitable contribution, which will reflect capital investments. Replacement of a brush rapid attack that is scheduled to go to Bymore. Work with summer villages to provide a quarter of the funding to purchase watercraft units for water rescue capabilities. And the fire department is also not without its challenges as well. One of their big ones is including recruitment and retention of firefighters, the plan for the closure of the Denelda station, long-term asset replacement, and ensuring adequate levels of reserves.
Krista,
Yes,
that rapid attack, you're saying Bymore?
I am saying yes. My understanding is that rapid attack will be going to Bymore for a replacement.
I thought it was going to Big Bill.
Nobody else already got one.
Oh. Thank you.
We have no other questions on fire at this time from council. So our next department is emergency management and protective services. You do see them as separate items on the budget, but I'm going to speak to them together as the staff carries over from one department, from both departments. Overall, it's minimal changes. The increase in protective services is due to the policing regulation, policing requisition, which will be covered off in taxes. The SRO officer added back into the budget. Council is going to be continuing to lobby for the SRO to be covered by the new policing requisition, and that's something that has been being worked on already. Emergency management has also been busy working on ensuring that all of the staff is trained to the appropriate level to be an integral part of the Emergency Operations Center. One of the mandates that came down a few years ago was that all staff needed to be at a certain level. And we've really struggled to find courses and get courses. And so there's a bunch of staff that will be attending in April some additional training. Protective Services has a vehicle replacement, and Protective Services for the last 13 years has been putting money away, and every year they put money away and do capital additions out of their reserve. So all of the funds for the unit that's being replaced will be coming out of reserves. There'll be continued support of truck safety, Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance inspections to increase safety of county road users. Joint voice operations with provincial federal partners, and some challenges include increased call volumes. Especially during the summer month, Protective Services is finding that there's a lot more call volume and a lot more activity, so that is always a challenge for them. Is there any questions on that one? So the biggest department that is at the County of Stettler, and no surprise, is Transportation Services or Public Works, whichever you prefer to call it. As I mentioned previously, they are facing a $2 million loss in revenue. And so that's part of the big reason you see a huge fluctuation between prior year to the current year. The loss of MSI funding was huge. We thought it was going to cut 40%, but MSI ended up cutting it 60%. It was a massive hit. We are offsetting the loss of that with reserves that we put away for MSI in 2020 and 21. Some of the projects that are going to be working on is the Botha and Gadsby transition grants. We're hoping to get all of that stuff finalized in 22. They're also hoping to get done, there's going to be some gravel crushing that's going on. Paving of the resource road. This was a grant funded from prior year's grants that was carried forward. So we're going to be using the funds from prior grants to use for that road. The storm water plan for Carlisle Estates will be completed. The sand shed will be installed out at the Public Works facility. Capital replacement that was added was a backhoe, a skid steer, a loader, as well as a grader mounted mower to improve quality of roadside mowing. One of the big struggles that is also in Public Works is bridges and lobbying for bridge funding. All of the bridge funding is dependent upon government funding, and we're at the mercy of what they approve and allow for budget or for bridge funding. The other item that is a big concern right now as well is ensuring cross-training of all staff is complete, as well as making sure jobs have covered off. They also are facing some retirees in the next year or so, so that is a factor as well for transportation services. Is there any questions right now? So our next budget that we go into is our utilities, and you also see this one as two separate budgets. We have water as one function and sewer or sanitary services as the other. Once again, same staff. It's a requirement for us to have them separate for financial statement purposes. So we've just kept them separate, but to speak on them, we'll go together. There is an increase in the overall budgets of 13% from prior year. There's increased capital projects is most of that. So there's a lot of rural water lines that need to be put in, and a lot of that is going to be covered by grant funding that's been carried forward from prior years, and grant funding that we currently get that has to be used on specific projects. A high priority of council has been to get additional water lines in throughout the County of Stettler for existing operations who are struggling to have enough water. Completion also of the Botha and Gadsby transition is not only in transportation, but it's also in our utilities department that they are hoping to get that done as well. There's also one fleet truck that is being replaced in the utilities department. And some of the challenges that are faced by the utilities department is lagoon capacities, what rural water hookup requests can be accomplished with current grant funding, and not enough to complete them all. So we do get a lot of requests in for rural water, and whether they meet the specifications of close enough to an existing line or the abilities for us to do them. Any questions on utilities? Yes, Larry.
Krista, I guess it's just a point to, it's not just utilities, but the county administration runs Shirley McClellan and does the Stettler Waste. So just, can you kind of indicate, as we look at, as we've looked through administration, those pieces, we also bring revenue in?
Yes.
So just to mention what revenue is brought in over from these secondary services that we do. Just you can do it at the end or wherever you'd like.
No, I can talk about some of that stuff right now. I don't have all of it up in front of me, but yeah, we do charge fees, and it's on basically ensuring that all of the county costs are covered off by the Shirley McClellan line. So approximately, do you want me to say the approximate dollar value that we do? It's been approximately 200,000 in past years that we've charged to Shirley McClellan for providing the maintenance and supervision, checking. What am I all missing, Andrew?
Yeah, so all of the operations is under that 200,000, and then there's a fixed fee as well for the administration, which is, I believe, $60,000 just for Shirley McClellan. And then as well, there are similar fixed fees for the administration of Stellar Waste and Step Ambulance as well. There's no operational components to those two contracts because they have their own employees. But we do the administration, the bookkeeping, and all of those regulatory requirements for it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on utilities at this point?
Krista? I just wonder, okay, like with that revenue, could you kind of explain like whether we put it into reserves, anything like that?
No, we don't put those revenues into reserves. They're used to cover off the costs that we incurred during the current year. So those revenues will be for basically our staff time that ends up going out, the truck calls, any of the supervision that's involved in providing the services to those along that Shirley McClellan water line.
Thank you.
Go into the next department, which is our garbage collection. So we are seeing an increase of 4% over the prior year. There was an increase in the Stettler Waste Management Authority requisition. So that is an increase that we're all going to be facing, as well as there's been installation of organic bins at the lake and increased recycling costs. Stettler Waste Management does the lion's share of garbage in the county of Stellar. So ours is mostly covered by the requisition and any additional costs that the county sees, recycling being the biggest one besides the requisition. Is there any?
I just wonder, okay, those two bins that we put up at, Scenic Sands,
Some Buffalo Sands.
so like, I'm just kind of wondering, like what size of wood is that? Could they be maybe scavenged through prior to being put into the bin if someone wants any firewood? Just so we can lessen the amount?
If I can speak to that, I'd be cautious about encouraging it just because it's not set up for that, and therefore an injury is a liability risk. Not to be that guy, but there's always the opportunity to do a more organized, creative thing. It does take manpower.
Makes sense. Chainsaw Massacre?
The community associations are quite involved up in those areas. So I would definitely suggest to avoid incurring cost to oversee such a program that perhaps working with the community associations would be good.
That is one thing that we've really seen an increase on the availability and usage of those, and it's costing everyone within the county for those use of those bins. And if they could lessen the amount of firewood that's going into it for campsites or for their fire pits.
I would think that if there's wood to cut up, they're probably cutting it up and using it for firewood. I think this is more, grass clippings and, things, we have a program where if they have a weed or it could be noxious or not noxious, but they'll double back it and put it in there, so it's properly disposed of, so things like that.
This is where their tax dollars go.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't believe that those bins are primarily used for wood. I think that would be a bit of a mischaracterization.
What have you been putting in, Justin?
Believe it or not, I have a closer one.
Is there other questions on garbage at this point? So I'm going to roll into agricultural services. And so agricultural services is seeing an increase of 15% over the prior year. And even though it seems rather large, we're not talking in the same kind of dollars that we are talking with Public Works. But a lot of this is due to a decrease in grant funding. There's a lot of work that has to be done on gravel pit reclamation with enhanced weed control, spraying and brushing for control of noxious and prohibited noxious weeds that is required to be done, increased weed and pest inspections. There is a planned capital replacement of a flat deck trailer in 2022, but that flat deck trailer is being funded out of reserves. So they had the funds available set aside in previous years. So that's where it's coming out of. And one of the big changes that Ag Services is going to be seeing in the 22 year is the strychnine sales are no longer allowed as of March 4th, 22. I still know that they are still doing sales, but as of March 4th, we are no longer allowed to sell it of 22, and as of March 4th, 23, I believe it's no longer to be used in Alberta. Is there any questions on Ag Services? So planning and development, the largest amount of acronyms, and I'll try not to mess a few of these ones up. Planning and development has seen an increase of 14.5% over the prior year. And a lot of this increase relates to some projects that are going to be ongoing in 22. So reviewing and updating of the land use bylaw, the LUB, the municipal development plan is also being done, which is the MDP. These are going to be funded out of reserves. So that is how the funding will come for those to be completed. Prior year capital of the new aerials came in, so we do not see additional capital requirements for 2022 forward for a couple of years, as those new aerials tend to be the big ticket items that they do need besides any of the plans that they have. We're also looking to complete the intermunicipal development plan and the Southeast Stettler Major Area Structure Plan. We'll also be reviewing the Buffalo Lake Municipal Reserve Fund and how those funds are to be allocated. We'll be promoting the sale of county-owned lots in the hamlets of Erskine and Botha. There also is some in other hamlets that we continue to work with, but Erskine and Botha is my understanding that we'll be working on getting, promoting the sale of those. And planning development is also not without their challenges as well. And one of the big things is Bitcoin operators. We're seeing that also on the administrative side with taxes and ensuring that we're getting those Bitcoin operations captured. Also, the Buffalo Lake South Shoreline Management Plan and implementation of management responsibilities of docking and mooring policy with Alberta Environment and Parks. Is there questions on planning and development budget? Yeah, Larry?
Krista, just the one I have is the fact that when you do review the budget, you see how this really is a funded group, that we collect such a little amount for the amount of work that's done out of it. So from a user pay basis, it's very low, but it is part of your development of your overall municipality. So this does cost the county a lot of money for planning and development, and doesn't bring in much cash generation.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, because tax ends up being the entire overall entire organization. And so when we get the tax revenue, once a development is completed and the development's done, it's getting taxed, that's when you start to see the revenue. But until we get all the work on the planning and development side done first, that's where that cost is for. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions on planning?
Not a question, but just a reminder for those online that we are still working towards getting an Alberta Environment rep in to discuss the mooring docking policy.
Yes, I think we have them booked for the February NPC meeting.
Okay. And that, I see a few of the callers are from that area, so just a reminder that is in progress.
No further questions or comments? So recreation is recreation, and I'll touch on culture as well. Culture being museums and libraries. So recreation, it's always about promoting healthy, viable communities through recreation support and opportunity. One of the challenges and continued investigation of viability of aging recreational infrastructure. So in 2022, we're proposing to take out the special recreation funding out of reserve and not replenish that reserve. That reserve has started to grow a little bit more than other reserves and didn't have some of the major projects that we've had in past years. So the funds are available there. So we're looking at funding it directly out of the reserve for 22. Some other challenges that we do face with recreation is continuing to offer programs with the performing arts for schools. There's been a lot of challenges the past couple of years as to offer stuff that works within the school guidelines as well as group settings. So that's been a whole issue in itself. The options for community services awards and how we will go forward with community service awards, aging infrastructure, as well as MSI cuts will be affecting the operational assistant grants that we do give out. I know there's been talk of changing the model within how we fund the operational assistance. And the operational assistance grant or the MSI cuts will also be affecting the way we fund museums and libraries. Because when we get our MSI operations money, we use that for museums, libraries, as well as the operational assistance. Does anyone have questions on recreation? Yes, Larry?
Just a point on just to make sure everybody's aware of the types of inspections that playgrounds and buildings where public are have to be held every year. And that is one of the services that's here so the playgrounds can stay open too. So it's one of those items that a lot of times people wouldn't see unless you happen to be there at that time. So just a plug for it.
Yeah, there is a lot of inspections that have to be done. I didn't realize how many playgrounds there were in the county of Stettler, and there is a number of them. Insurance is also covered off by our recreation department. It's between recreation and administration staff. That is a huge time commitment as well. So anytime that there's any type of incident, whether it's county or any of the three groups that we also manage, being Stettler Waste, Stettler District Ambulance, and Shirley McClellan Waterline, any of those are handled by our insurance person. So it's a vast array, and there was a lot of claims over the last couple of years, whether it was from hail or an accident or anything. So there's a lot of that has to be handled with insurance. Not only that, with the insurance, now you got me going, Andrew. The insurance, we also handle the insurance for all of the, I lost the word, the operational assistance, the community groups. There we go. So we also have to send out the billings for all of those, and we work with those community groups to ensure that they have adequate insurance coverage for their facilities. Yes.
And that insurance coming through the county and the RMA insurance, that gives the local organizations a better insurance rate than they could achieve otherwise.
Absolutely, it does.
But it is, of course, more staff time for us, but it's certainly worth it to the community organizations.
Yes. So that takes us to the end of all of the departments. Once you go to the cash flow, account for reserve transfers, any of the cash flow items, adjustments for depreciation, projects, capital, surplus project carryovers for the year. We do show a surplus at the end of 2022 of 2,624. So we are presenting in balance budget. It is not a deficit budget. We've never done deficit budgeting at the County of Stettler. Our requirement is to show a balanced budget, and that is what I am presenting to council and to the public today. At this point, I have completed the formal part of all of the departments. I'm going to turn this over to Andrew and Larry at this point.
Thank you, Krista.
Thank you.
Andrew, you'll go through
First, if there's any other general
any
questions.
questions from council. Councilor Stevens.
I was wondering if you could pull up the chart for the RECs and spend a minute explaining that.
For the which, sorry?
The RECs, percentages of taxes in versus going out to the RECs. Oh, am I not close enough?
Sorry, these ones?
I believe it's up near the top, page 4. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
The chart.
Do you want to walk into this?
Doesn't matter unless you really wanted to.
I don't.
So what we did is basically it's starting on basically so you can understand where your property taxes are going. So we took an average assessed value of 580,000 on a house, and your taxes in 2022 would be $4,578. Of that total, 2,167 is getting transferred to other bodies, that being the province, the town of Stettler, Stettler Waste Management, and senior housing. That leaves $2,411 in 2022 going to municipal services. Or breaking it down, $200.92 a month. Wanted to break it down further, $661 per day. And some of those services that you do get are snow clearing, gravel and grading of the 2,777 kilometers between the hamlets and subdivisions. It gives us ambulance service. It provides fire department, local government, the local government lobbying that will get done on ratepayers' behalf for issues that may exist in the county. So that's what you see there on your sheet, on that breakdown. Are you doing the math?
I've done the math already. Yeah, it's 47% of the money that we take in is essentially a flow through to another organization. And that's it. I knew it was high until I was seated here. I didn't know it was that.
If I may add, maybe a lot of ratepayers don't realize nearly half of the money that they pay in taxes doesn't stay for the county municipal purposes. So that is a huge chunk that we pass on. We act as bankers for free too, basically.
Correct.
And it's worth noting, when we talk about a tax increase here, we talk about only the portion of the tax bill that does stay with us, that we would apply that rate to. So if you look at your tax bill today and say 3%, it's not 3% on the total, it's 3% on the, in this case, the very top line. And that's all that changes.
And even on years where the county has no increase in their municipal taxes, people's taxes may go up because of things that we have no jurisdiction over, like school tax. If school tax goes up, your total bill will go up, but of course the county didn't get anything out of that and didn't put any tax increases in on those years. But that is something to keep in mind.
And Krista, just on the services provided, I think, you gave the light version. Because you look at the mowing of our gravel roads, you look at the mowing in the subdivisions, the hamlets, the more urbanized areas of our county. You look at the playground inspections and the hall inspections and the building inspections, the help of insurance and the collection of taxes for the overall county. Like our administration pieces, it's all part of administration, but I mean, that is a big part of the business that has to be done, applying for the grants, doing everything that we do to make this, keep this and continue to grow it as much as we can with the funding that's available.
Yeah, I did touch on just some high level stuff, the ones that are a little bit easier for people to see and hear that relate to them. But yes, there's so many more services. And I think that's one of the key things that you've mentioned, Larry, is that and Justin, you also mentioned it, there's so much more that you don't necessarily see because it doesn't necessarily impact you. And there's a lot that is going on.
Thank you. Any other?
Another comment too, I guess, is the increases that we see, like just like every other person sees, is the increase in costs, the increase in equipment costs, increase in fuel costs, utility costs, labor costs, everything goes up over time. And if you can't remain constant with your tax base, or, I mean, there's no way that would balance the budget. And then this budget, of course, was balanced not just on tax increases. It was budgeted on cuts. It was budgeted on pulling money from reserves and a small tax increase and going after as many grants and things as you can. So there's many pieces to balancing the budget, not just tax increases.
Councillor Gender?
I'll just make the comment, back in 2016, I believe that we had about $16 million that was disposable income. Right now, so it'd be 5-6 years later, we're sitting about 8 million. So we're working with 50% of the budget on the same services that we have ever provided in the past. So it's been a hell of an adjustment on ourselves, and it's continuing still down the road. We are not still to the end of this road yet. We've still got another year or two yet on this, on a trend that is going to be downhill. Yes, it is going to be very much a challenge for the next few years coming into hand.
I can honestly say this was probably one of the most challenging budgets in my 15 years of doing budgets at the county. This was the most challenging one.
One more point. I think the county ratepayers have had the luxury of a very healthy oil and gas industry for a number of years. And oil and gas, we're paying 60-70% of the tax base at one time. Well, of course, with the downturn in the oil and gas industry, and then which creates a downturn in provincial economy, which turns into a cut in provincial funding, all of a sudden that luxury is no longer there. And the people that enjoyed that luxury for so many years, of course, now, I mean, for their own services, they're going to have to pay a little bit more because that advantage isn't there right now. It may come back, hopefully, but right now it's not there. So I mean, I think we're really grateful that we had that for so many years to keep taxes low. But when it's gone, it's gone.
Any other questions or comments from council? If not. Andrew, do the people online right now see what you've posted?
Not yet. I'm just waiting for your nod, and I'll move on to that.
Yes, I think we can open up for questions if we have another comment.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. So for the questions, everyone's muted right now. We just ask that to make this work a little bit better, you put up your hand if you've got a question that you want to ask of council. And if you're on computer, the direction should be there, depending on the version of Zoom you have. The raise hand option will be on there, either participants or reactions. And then once that's done, I'll get a little notification that you want to speak, and I'll ask you to unmute, and you'll get a little confirmation when you're ready to unmute. You hit unmute. If you are on phone or iPad, you'll find the raise hand button typically under the ... more icon. And then it's the same from there. Press raise hand. And then when I ask to unmute you, you just press unmute and it will allow you to speak. I don't believe we've got anyone actually who called in with a telephone that's only working with a keypad. So I'll skip that bit. Oh, and so you can go ahead and raise your hand if you have questions, but in the interim, maybe we can each introduce ourselves and wave at the camera, starting with Nikki on my left.
I'm Nikki Thorstensen, Director of Communications.
I'm Andrew Brishik, Director of Municipal Services.
Larry Clark, Reeve, and Block and Gadsby, Councillor.
No, I had it shut off. Mr. Cornelison, Director of Corporate Services.
Nick Cassidy, CAO.
Ernie Gender, Stettler.
Paul McKay, Denali Red Oil.
Justin Stevens, Erskine Buffalo Lake.
Russ Stillberg, by Morandian. James Narber, Erskine South Warden.
Yes.
And when you, yeah, so if you have a question, if you can introduce yourself before asking, and I will start with Corinne, if you can choose the option to unmute yourself. And go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name's Corinne Cruikshank, and I'm a part-time resident at Scenic Sands. And first of all, I just want, my questions are more comments. I don't really need answers on them. I just wanted to thank Yvette and Justin, who spent a ton of time with me, explaining to me the budget, and so I have a better understanding. So I want to thank you both, and I want to thank you, Justin, for doing an outstanding job with working with us. My comment is I was a little bit disappointed that there were more money was going into budget or to meetings. I would like to see the more effective stuff and less meeting. That's my personal thing. I'd like to see things like cost neutral, more the rural water lines so the counties to subsidize as much. Insurance, we paid, like we have a Phoenix Sands has insurance through the county settler, but we paid an admin fee for that. And my last comment is the organic bins. We've worked with Yvette and we very much appreciate them and we're very respectful. I can't speak for Buffalo Sands, but I can speak for Buffalo Scenic Sands, and we're very appreciative and very respectful of what goes into the bin. Thank you.
I just want to comment back to Corinne, especially on the meeting piece, Corinne.
Sorry?
Corinne, Larry Clark. And just on the meeting piece, I think all of us want effective meetings, but we've really found with bylaws and policies, we did have a policy and bylaw committee that would review, we reviewed many of them, Councillor Niver and at that time Councillor Neitz was on it. And we went through many of them and brought them back to council. But as you hit your bigger bylaws, we found that it was better to have meetings that we review those as a whole group so that everybody has their input and everybody fully understands what we're doing. So yes, we do want to have a lot more effective meetings, but on that same sense, we need to have a lot of these meetings to go through this information because there's a pile of information to go through. So, and Andrew's got something to comment on that.
Yeah, and it's just expanding on a comment Krista had earlier, anticipating that we will have more meetings this year, and that's actually public engagement meetings that we're focusing on. So as we go through the land use bylaw and municipal development plan, which guide the development through the county, so it's probably our biggest and most important bylaw and one that everyone ends up interacting with as they manage their properties. We want to have a substantial amount of public input on that. So that's largely where we anticipate more meetings coming from. It's it's a 2-year project, and I think the lake subdivisions on the call will remember when we did the South Shore Area Structure Plan. We're wanting to bring that same format into it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Councillor Stevens, then Councillor Stolberg.
First, I appreciate your comments, and I was just going to echo a lot of what Andrew just said. Meetings, when it comes to public engagement and getting the public more involved, that's an area where I really feel that there's a great deal of benefit. So I support that wholeheartedly.
Councillor Stolberg.
Speaking on behalf of the Agricultural Services Board, if there's not enough material for a meeting in a particular month, there isn't a meeting held just for the sake of a meeting. Those months, there is no ASB meetings. So, I mean, we strive for the efficiencies where we can find them. I mean, and also, I think it's been highlighted that the budget, we spent more money on meetings last year than the budget reflected or was planning for. So it's just a little bit more realistic planning this year. And then you throw in all the extra like the LUB, MDP, and IDP, and all those things that we're reviewing this year, it does bump it up a bit.
Thank you. Councillors, thank you, Corinne.
Thank you for your comments.
Anybody want to comment? Nobody really responded to the cost neutral water line philosophy. We do subsidize those with taxes at this point. Did any councillor want to take that?
I can start that.
Yeah.
Councillor Stolberg?
Your comment, Corinne, about the cost neutral water lines, I mean, if that was totally the case, there would be no probably rural water because it would be cost prohibitive. So the county largely does these water line projects when they can access grant funding. And then that has to still be paired with taxpayer dollars because it does benefit the whole county. If you can get, areas where, it's possible for people to do their businesses and live and stuff, like if there is no water source or such a very poor water source, I mean, you're not going to get acreages developing and people living in our county. And we definitely want to welcome more people to our county. It makes for better communities. So it does come back in a bit of a reward at the end with it. Hamlets and the where the rural water lines are. If you've got a good source of water, you'll help people live there, and when you have people live there, they pay taxes.
Councillor Gender?
Ernie Gender here. Myself, yes, I have lived north of Gatsby where there was very little water. Like it was nothing in order to sustain the household if you really watched it. I have installed water lines for the county of Stettler down by more in Indiang, and I do realize I can really feel for the residents of the county where if you don't have any water. Right now, we are looking at, we do have substantial amount of money or some money set aside for doing some more water lines, and we are pretty much putting it towards the Gatsby area, which I am very much in favor, but it is something that we as all of the council are looking at different directions and different views on how we can put in more water line for the same price. And we are discussing it amongst ourselves, trying to find out, okay, whether we open cut, whether we directional drill. We're trying to find every possible way that we can put in more water line for the bang for the buck. Thank you.
And I guess Larry Clark here on this also, I guess a lot of the things that take us from cost neutral on this too is to meet the environmental standards to ensure that you've got safe potable water coming to every stop. And because a lot of the lines we're putting in now and the equipment we're putting in is very reliable. The lines have very low maintenance on them. And even like the valving systems, what we're doing now is a lot better than what was did in the past. So hopefully that the direct operating costs are lesser as we go forward, but there's still other costs that we have to do to meet the standards, and those standards are changing all the time. So that's why we have our fellows in our water trucks running around testing our lagoons, testing to make sure that our water is potable and our lagoons are at safe operating conditions and when they can be released and that they're safe to release. Councillor Stevens?
Andrew or Yvette probably know this. How often do we renegotiate our rates with Shirley McLellan? Because that is an opportunity to make sure that our costs are balanced for services that are.
As Chair of Shirley, we look at that every year. But we also buy our water from the town of Stettler.
Yeah.
So therefore, we have to look at what we're being charged from the town of Stettler. We look at our operating costs for Shirley McLellan. And then we look at what we have to charge out to pipeline users and water, like the truck fill users. And in order to try to be as fair as we can, we compare our rates to other areas of the province. And we do, in my opinion, run one of the best water systems in the province, and it is the longest water line in North America, the longest rural water line.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next person. That's Julie. Should just ask you to unmute on your screen now and you tap the unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I've got just a few questions. I'd like to ditto my thank you that Corinne gave you guys for this. It's not easy when you have declining revenue and increase in expenses to deliver a balanced budget. I think just a few things that I've noticed is that Public Works is 50% of your budget. Of 50% of the budget of the monies you get to keep. And you do have to cover a lot of rural roads in a large county geographically. And I would think that's probably challenging for the Public Works Department. You had mentioned that 47% of the taxes flow through to outside organization. I believe Justin mentioned that. Is there something other than school taxes that goes into that?
Yeah.
That's one question. And then the other question I had on protective services, that's gone up almost to 178,000. And you mentioned that vehicle replacements would come out of reserves. Is that because of bylaw enforcement or increased issues at the lake in the summer? I'm just wondering what are some of the more specifics around protective services? And what was the other question? Oh, no, I had planning and development. Very happy to see the land use bylaws getting updated. I know that's been on your wish list for a long time, so I'm glad that there's some money going into that. And just an overall question, how soon do you think that the oil and gas revenues that you might expect them to return, or if at all?
Take out the match.
That's a gate ball.
Don't you wish you had?
Really, if you want to be,
Maybe your husband could
Give us a better idea too, but
Maybe.
if you want to be optimistic, I think, and plan our budget forward, we have to think it's not going to come back. I really hope that we do. I hope through the enhanced oil recovery systems, et cetera, and possibly Central Alberta will see different frac techniques as other parts of the world have seen. But, you hope in one hand and budget in the other hand, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So we have to see that turn or that switch before we start calculating that into our budgets. So I worked in that industry for years, in this area for a lot of years. And I don't foresee a huge turnaround, especially with the amount of abandonment rigs that have been working. I do hope we can sustain what we have and maybe see a slight increase. That's on the oil and gas side.
So,
Julia, James Nyberg here. I'll take a little bit of a stab at the protective services. So a number of things, we did change some bylaws referring to some of our, how we're looking after our major asset, and that major asset is our roads. We have a number of rule changes that we're trying to protect. We've put in some direct haul routes so that those roads are protected, and that has been a major point of our enforcement. Emergency management has been another huge increase to our protective services group. They've with everything that's been going on from the province in the last 3 or 4 years with the fires and floods and then fires again, it seems like we're not at a shortage of natural disasters that are hitting us. So we have to plan for the worst case scenario. And you're right, we do have a huge increase of complaints that come in over the summer out at the lake, and our protective services does work on a complaint basis. And during that summer month, when the population up there is at a constant stress level of people being out there, so is the concerns and complaints that come in, and our staff are put up there. I'm not sure if I can quantify it, but I heard 1/3 of our calls were directed to the lake. So that's a fair jag of calls for just one particular portion of the county. So hopefully that answers your question on that one, Jude.
Andrew wants to.
Want to expand, although everything Councillor Nyberg brought up is absolutely accurate. The majority of that work is undertaken with our existing resources. The big financial change you see there is actually what goes to the province, which kind of dovetails nicely with your first question. So the police, the RCMP is a new charge to rural municipalities that started a couple years ago now. And so that's being phased in over time, and it's growing to its final number or final-ish number that we expect to see in the next year or two. Yeah, it'll be close to $500,000 that we remit back to the province for policing alone. And so that's one of the other items beyond education. We also have seniors housing is paid for through your taxes, seniors and affordable housing, I should say. As well, we have the solid waste requisition is paid forward. And there's a component that's paid to the town of Stettler for recreational facilities in the town. So that's what makes it up, and you can find it in the public budget document at page 4.
Andrew, when you talk about the solids recycling, are you talking the recycling piece or the waste?
That's exclusively waste. Recycling is handled as a different budget line, and then some additional waste charges are handled independently by the county.
But that's also an item on our line number. That's always a cost. We're not seeing a revenue off of that, even though you try to follow through the proper procedures.
Yeah.
Councillor Stillberg.
I was just gonna answer the same question Andrew answered.
Okay, so did he answer it okay?
Pretty good.
Councillor Tender.
Julia Attorney Gender here. See, 2 or 3 years ago, we had 2 peace officers, and like Mr. Nyberg had mentioned that we've now gone to 3 because it has taken the full time of 1 officer just to do the emergency management that has been downloaded onto us, say like from the government. As it relates to say like the oil industries, right now we're seeing more service rigs taking wells out of commission than just servicing them. And we have not seen a drilling rig in this county for 3, 4, 5 years. So as soon as the number comes back that we have more drilling rigs and service rigs that are going to be taking wells out of ours, then we can possibly start looking at the positive side coming in. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie.
Any other comments? Councillor Stevens?
Just a clarification on the protective services emergency management side of things. In an effort to find efficiencies, we're looking towards a regional model with all of our neighbors. And the hope is that will minimize redundant meetings and there can be some cost sharing between our neighbors. So that is one where we are trying to find efficiencies wherever they can be found.
We already have a regional one, we just need to formalize it.
I would call it
After, because we manage all the emergency management process.
Yeah.
Well, they would go from, I believe, 15 to 3 meetings.
Yeah, it's quasi-regional. We're more duplicated. Unfortunately, the Alberta Emergency Management Act didn't allow us with a ton of opportunities to be a formally regional commission or a group without going to a full-on commission, which would have been extra red tape. But they finally are giving us insight that we should be able to cut some red tape there and not have duplicate meetings with different municipal councils. We can all hold one meeting together.
Yeah, so that's like a reduction in 12, so that should help.
Yeah.
Julie, did we get all your questions?
Yeah, I just saw that when you did your survey, bylaw enforcement was one of the priorities. And I just wondered if that was increasing the cost for protective services also, if that's anticipated to increase your
We made
costs.
the increase in that cost happened a couple of years ago, effectively, and we're really getting into the swing of things. Our bylaw officers, no longer just a bylaw officer, she is a community peace officer as well now. She did get her accreditation as well, so her level of authority has expanded as well. So
Perfect.
we're quite.
Thank you very much.
And I've just got one more comment, Julie, it's Larry, just on Public Works. Public Works is half, but when you look at Public Works and what it encompasses, it's not just grading the roads or graveling the roads, it's culverts, it's building sections, it's plowing snow, it's cutting the grass, it's doing all those other pieces. So yeah, that's really a lot of the other pieces of the business is the planning and the administration end. That's really where the boots hit the ground is with the public works side. So, and being a county or municipality, that is where a lot of your dollars go to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to add one further point to Reeve Clark's comments on that. This is Les Stuhlberg. The costs are quite incredible in Public Works because one grader costs $600,000. and to acquire gravel for the amount of roads that the county has is a huge bill. So the expenses there are just so much higher than any other expenses. And the demand, I guess, for services is so much higher there. So that one definitely is what takes the lion's share.
Councilor Gender?
Just one added on to there. My very first term when I come in here, like I saw the price of what the county was buying a grader for. It quite opened my eyes because I myself, I have never bought brand new equipment. So I asked a local contractor, just for the heck of it, inquire, say like with same specs, what price a contractor could get it for. And like it was 25% more than what we could. So we do buy equipment at much more of a substantial saving through our RMA purchases that we can get a very much better deal on it.
Thank you, Councilor Gender. Okay, do we have any other hands up?
I don't at this time, no.
No. I'd like to just I'd really like to thank everybody for joining and for the comments that have come forward and the respectful way that like comments have come forward today is this is a good conversation. It's an explanation conversation. And with any concerns that there is, we take concerns away and talk to them as council after. So I do thank everybody for coming in. If there's other questions after, please either phone into the office or phone your counselor and ask those questions, and we'll get the questions back to you. Councilor Stobart?
One thing I'd like to draw attention to is we've had a few tougher budgets recently since the downturn in the economy and the oil and gas industry plummeting and problems collecting taxes from that industry. And really, I just want to send kudos out to our staff. We're operating this county with just as many services as we ever did, but with far less staff. So we're pushing the staff awfully hard to accomplish this, and they've stepped up to the plate. And I think kudos to them because they're working incredibly hard on behalf of the ratepayers. And I think if we actually reflected all the work they do and how much staff we really should have, your taxes would be much higher. So we have a well-trained staff that are really, they're cross-trained, they're handling other positions that they never used to have to do, and they're taking it in stride and doing it very well. So I think that piece has to be acknowledged too.
Thank you, Councilor Stolberg, and yes, you're 100% bang on with that statement right there. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will close this meeting. Thank you.